Morning, church. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Heather. I'm a member of this church, but I don't attend very often because I'm quite unwell. But I'm married to Martin, and we also live with Sarah, both of whom you'll see quite often. I wanted to share something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, which relates to the story of the Good Samaritan. We came across this a few weeks ago as part of the E100 Bible reading program. And it's in Luke chapter 10. I'm particularly interested in the context of what Jesus was saying when he said the story. So we start with a lawyer comes to talk to Jesus, and he says, "What do I have to do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus counters with a question of his own. He says, "What is the most important commandment?" And the lawyer answers from the Mosaic law, which he was very familiar with, saying that you have to love God and love your neighbour as yourself. So Jesus says, well, you already know the answer to the question. That's what you have to do to inherit eternal life. But the lawyer's not satisfied. He wants to know the limit of his responsibility. So he asks, who is my neighbour? And I've been feeling a heck of a lot like that lawyer recently. Jesus tells the well-known story. There's a man who gets beaten up. Various people pass by and don't help him, and the Samaritan comes along and does help him. The answer appears to be, your neighbour is anyone you come across who needs help. It doesn't matter if helping them interferes with your worshipping of God. It doesn't matter if they despise you. It doesn't matter if helping them costs you a whole heap of money. It doesn't matter if it's dangerous. In order to get eternal life, that's how you have to love people. And I've been wondering what this means for me, and in particular what this means for me in our very globalised world where there's so many people out there and they are so needy. Also feeding into this, my dad's been part of some conversations at his church recently about various people trying to decide what school to send their kids to. And he thinks that loving your neighbour comes into this a lot, because he thinks that loving your neighbour as yourself means wanting opportunities for them that are as good as the opportunities you want for yourself, or indeed wanting opportunities for their children that are as good as the opportunities you want for your own children. I don't have kids, so I don't need to make any hard calls about choosing what school to send them to in the light of this teaching of Jesus. But I do make many other choices day to day that have very big impacts on other people. For example, just the other week, I had a gynecological procedure that I hope will significantly improve my quality of life. It wasn't government funded, and it cost me a bit over $450. Martin and I have been quite interested in recent years in the work of the Hamlin Fistula Hospital in Ethiopia. And they exist to repair a condition called obstetric fistula, which is where a woman basically gets damage as a result of being in labour for literally days and days, far too long. And in New Zealand she'd just have a caesarean section. She wouldn't be left in labour that long, but that's not usually an option in Ethiopia. The damage she gets tends to make her incontinent, and so because she's generally smelly and unpleasant to be around, that often leads to her being made homeless, as in her family reject her, and it can lead very often to malnourishment because of that, and sometimes to actual starvation. So, and an obstetric fistula repair operation costs about $600 New Zealand. So I could have had my procedure, or I could have put my $450 towards, most of the way towards funding such an operation for one of my sisters in Ethiopia. Foregone my improved quality of life for quite possibly her actual life itself. Did I love my neighbour by making the choice I did? I don't know. Where does it stop? Martin and I are well known for loving to cook and eat a wide variety of food. But we could stay healthy by eating rice and lentils and the cheapest of vegetables that are out there, and a few other bits and bobs to make it into a balanced diet. We would not enjoy that very much. But is our enjoyment of our varied diet worth what we could do with that money? We could instead, with those savings, quite possibly take one or two entire families lift them out of malnutrition in far off countries? And is our enjoyment of such variety really worth their chronic ill health from malnutrition? In choosing to eat as I do, am I loving my neighbour as myself? So I start to feel like a lawyer in the gospel. What is the limit of my responsibility? Who is my neighbour? How much do I have to do before I've done enough? I found the story very challenging. I don't have much in the way of answers to those questions. I do have one answer, which is that whatever I do, it will never be enough. The question was, what do I have to do to inherit eternal life? Jesus died on the cross because we cannot do what it takes to inherit eternal life. My loving will never be big enough. But that sounds like it could turn into a bit of a cop-out. But God actually still wants us to love our neighbours as ourselves. This is one of the two most important commandments. Even though it's not possible, we should be heading in that direction. And so I would ask that you would join me in asking God, how do we love our neighbours as ourselves in this complex, globalised world where there are so very many neighbours, and on a global scale we are all so very rich? Thank you.